Good morning, everyone. Good morning, and welcome to the First Foods Our Prevention webinar. We here at AICAF are looking forward to providing you with great information today. I'm Eric Gibson. I'm one of the three people under the policy and prevention umbrella here at AICAF. We also have Gwendina Lee Gatewood and Nora Vonnegut, my counterpart, and all of us are involved in education, engagement, outreach, and technical assistance. One of the first things I want to point out to everybody today is that door prizes will be offered throughout the entirety of the presentation. And as you saw from the first slide, please utilize the Padlet QR code or the link that's provided in the chat to provide answers to the questions that we asked, who you are, your title, where you're logging in from, and what is one of your first foods. If there's an issue with the Padlet, feel free to put that information in the chat as the substitute. So in a few moments, I'll be providing a bit of information about AICAF's vision, the approach, the strategies. We'll describe First Foods Prevention Campaign. We'll give a peek into what our technical assistance offerings involve. And finally, we'll spotlight the work that the Leech Lake SNAP Ed coordinators are doing, which directly ties into First Foods Prevention. And we'll have room for questions and discussion at the end if necessary. So about AICAF. The American Indian Cancer Foundation is a national Native nonprofit, and it was started to fix the huge cancer problems in Native communities. AICAF's mission is to get rid of cancer in Indian country, and we work to give Natives better access to cancer prevention, finding cancer early, cancer treatment, and help for cancer survivors. When it comes to the vision and approach here, AICAF wants to make a world where cancer isn't the main cause of death for Native Americans. We believe that Native communities have the wisdom to fix cancer problems on their own, but they often need help with organization, expert advice, and resources. So AICAF gives tribes those things to find those solutions. We help tribes find their own best ways to fight cancer, and we do this by health system partnerships where we team up with local health clinics, hospitals, and health programs, community education and outreach, where we share information and resources with Native communities, and community-based research, where we work with tribes to study health in their communities, and the tribes lead the research. Now, before I continue, like I said before, we'll be giving door prizes out throughout the entirety of the presentation today. So I'm going to turn it over very quickly to Gwendina Lee Gatewood, and she'll list off some of the winners.
Thank you, Eric. Wheel of names. Nora, if you could spin the wheel and we can determine who will win the first three prizes that we have. And we'd like to thank the donations that came for these prizes. We have a major prize at the end, which I think you will like. So we'll go to the spinning of the wheel at this time.
Can folks see that screen? Should be shared. If not, our first winner is Dawn Satterfield. I apologize if I'm not saying names correctly. Is Dawn here today?
Okay, and then two more.
Is Dawn here? I can't see the chat. Sorry, Gwendina, can you confirm?
Sorry. I do not see Dawn in the chat.
Okay, I will spin again. Kelsey Larson.
Kelsey Larson. The first two items are Sacred Breath t-shirts. And then a third one.
All right. Yasmin Graf.
Yasmin Graf. Okay. All right. If they are not available, then we'll continue onward. But these are the people that have won door prizes. Dawn Sattenfield, Kelsey Larson, and Yasmin Graf. So thank you, Nora, for assisting in the Wheel of Names.
Move on. So under AICAF strategies, especially when it comes to this campaign, I'll talk specifically about this campaign, actually. First Foods of Prevention does these two things: teaches people about healthy native foods and exercise. We give Native communities the tools and help that they need to be healthy, and we share information and facts about Native health to make it more visible and normal to talk about. And I also want to add that stopping cancer before it starts is extremely important to AICAF. Native American communities get cancer more often and die from cancer more than other groups. AICAF wants to stop this by focusing on prevention. Prevention is key. Prevention or preventing cancer fits with Native views on health and wellness. It means avoiding big problems down the road. So many cancers that Native Americans get, they can be stopped. Things like not smoking commercial tobacco, that prevents cancers. AICAF also promotes various cancer screenings. So screening finds a number of cancers early when they can be treated best. Preventing cancer helps avoid pain for people and their communities. It helps keep elders in knowledge with tribes longer, and it lowers the need for caregiving. Working on prevention lets tribes take charge of their health, and tribes can find answers in their cultures. So in summation, by teaching prevention, doing research, and changing rules, AICAF helps tribes get healthy their own way. Stopping cancer before it spreads makes a huge difference now and for future generations. And with that, I thank you, and I'll now turn it over to Gwendina to begin the presentation regarding the rest of our campaign.
Thank you very much, Eric, and good morning to all of you. Thank you for joining us today. And the First Foods are Prevention, and the screen that you see before you is very impactful. It shows corn in their different varying colors. And First Foods as prevention is something that we all have grown up with. So with that, Eric, if you could go into the next slide. Here at AICAF, we are helping everyone go through reclaiming Indigenous health through food and movement. And as you think about Indigenous food and movement and our work with cancer disproportionately affects Native people. Preventable factors that put our communities at a higher risk for cancer diagnosis are obesity, diabetes, diets low in fiber and high in animal fat, and a lack of physical activity. Traditional food and lifeways are important for cancer prevention and are the key to reclaiming wellness across Indian country. Next slide, please. think about this question: how are first foods used in your community? At the beginning of the webinar, you answered the Padlet question, what were your first foods? And those were shared in the chat. And for example, I just want to see that in the chat, it says here from Christine from Montezuma Creek, Utah, one of her first foods was artichokes. So thank you, Christine. Just wanted to share that comment with all of you. And as you can see from the chat, but we all have a deep connection to food. Food can bring back memories, remind us of who we are. We eat food to celebrate. We eat food to celebrate a birth, a passing of a loved one, food when we get together for ceremonies, dancing, singing. Food is used for healing. It's a part of our Indigenous way of life. And earlier, Eric spoke about allowing those to be incorporated in the healing aspects in dealing with cancer prevention. And as a White Mountain Apache, I would like to share with you about first foods, a memory of my grandma. And she spoke to me about Indigenous food. And she gave me 4 aspects of what to think about. She gave me this knowledge and teaching as I was growing up. And she talked to me about planting seeds. And she also talked to me about using it as planting knowledge, seeds of knowledge for food and passing down stories, traditional and ancestral foodways. She also talked about engaging in traditional practice, supporting that purpose and belonging, contributing to the health of our people, and then also eating the Indigenous foods, consuming foods that our ancestors ate to support their well-being for the current and future generations, and having access to those resources, where we get the food, how we can sustain that to support living life for people. When all of this is present and in balance, Gwendina, she would say, we have the best health. This is our connection to what's needed to reclaim health and food. So when you think about it, when all those things that I just mentioned that my grandma talked to me about, when all of that's in balance, we have the best health. And she lived during a time when there was no cell phone, there's no modern conveniences of what we have today. And she shared with me her stages of life as told to her when she was a baby, her youth, and as an adult and as an elder, and incorporating food and culture through teachings from her grandma, storytelling, experiential learning, and mentoring, which she passed down to others. This, as she told the story, reminded me that natural preventative medicine and nourishment paired with the activity of harvesting is meant to nourish us mentally, emotionally, and spiritually as well. And fundamentally, eating traditional foods is medicine. It's our healing. It's so important to who we are. And with that, she would ask me to think about, how does food play in wellness, especially after I became a mom? And how does that connect us to the environment? How are you going to incorporate first foods to your children? And that gave me a lot to think about. And as you attend this webinar, for generations, our communities throughout Indian country, we've used food, as I've mentioned before, for our own well-being, for our own spiritual, emotional, physical health. And it's done its part for our ancestors. And fast forward to now, if we continue in those traditional practices and consuming the foods and engaging in our traditional upbringing of what we were taught and supporting that and living our life, we can reclaim that balance. And we're doing that day by day. And today, Leech Lake will give us a bird's eye view of how they've done their part in incorporating some of this. So with that, Indigenous foods, first foods are prevention. They help us to heal. They help to connect us. They help to do so much in the powerful food systems that foster language, teachings, and interactions amongst the elder, youth, adult, babies. Earlier, I spoke of stages of life of our people. For everybody, everybody has a stage of life. And in that, you learn about eating, living, working, planning, and you learn about your food systems. So all in all, throughout your stages of life, you incorporate food. Food is prevention. Food is healing. And food is good for our spirits, physically, emotionally, in all facets. And I'm so very thankful for the teachings that my grandma provided me in that aspect. So how are first foods used in your community? What have you been shared by your mom, your grandma, or who raised you? All of that makes you who you are. And it's so important as we move forward in this life that we are living at this time. So I'll turn the time now over to Nora Vonnegut, who will then go into her portion of this webinar.
Thank you, Gwendina. Hi, everybody. My name is Nora, and it's so nice to have so many of you joining us today. Before we move on to some resources that our campaign has to offer, we want to hear from some of you how first foods are used in your community. It looks like some of you have mentioned melon and fiber, bananas, wild rice, avocados, house-made chicken soup that someone's mom taught them. So when do you see these first foods being used in your everyday lives? Are they used in your everyday lives? If you're able to share in the chat, that would be wonderful. We do have some door prizes. So the next answer I see in the chat will win a door prize. So sharing how are first foods used in your community, be that in every day, at events, maybe they're used only at celebrations. So if you want to share that in the chat, that would be great, just so we can hear from some of you. All right, Tammy Scott. Apples are given out to community at harvest. Dr. Linda Frizzell, breast milk, yes, absolutely. One of the very, very first foods. And Deanna, I apologize. Manuman, would you, and I apologize if I'm not pronouncing that correctly. Deanna, would you be able to share how that is used? Thank you so much, everyone that's continuing to share a food that is our first foods. Cinnamon harvest, walleye. Eric, if you wouldn't mind just jotting those first few names down so we can send them door prizes. Thank you so much. Wild rice, very versatile and used at all meals. Dried chilies are sacred and shared between our family gardens each September. Oh, thank you on the pronunciation, Deanna, I appreciate it. Share that at ceremony. Okay. Acorn soup, wild banana rice, wild berry harvesting, community and family gatherings, ceremony. So It's so great to see that these are used at family gatherings and in your everyday lives, because one of the reasons that we talk about first foods and have an entire campaign dedicated to it is because while it's great if they're used at ceremony and special occasions, we really encourage those first foods to be implemented in your daily lives because of the preventatives they serve for cancer and other diseases. And so it's really great to see that some of you are able to use them in everyday life. And really, a lot of our conversation today and the content that I'll be getting into next, we'll be talking about how can you implement them a little bit more every day, considering the resources that you have available, the bandwidth that you may have. I'm just looking at the chat. Strawberry water in the spring. Access to traditional foods can be a challenge in an urban area. Thank you for bringing that up. We absolutely understand that being in an urban area as opposed to a more rural area where you may have ample land to farming your own foods and food sovereignty is different. So thank you. That's a really important point. In our community, we dry sweet corn and pastiapi, traditional colored corn. We use it in soup, also buffalo. Elderberry made into syrup to help keep illness away. So this is a great example of using first food as a preventative. Well, thank you so much for sharing, and please continue to share. This is really great to see, and I hope everyone's able to kind of read through. Eric, if you wouldn't mind advancing it to the next slide. So we're going to just share a little bit about some culturally tailored resources that we have available, so that if you're trying to implement it more, if you want to get creative with how you're using first foods, these are resources available to you on our website. You can use the QR code that's on the screen to kind of tag it for future use. If for some reason that's not working and you'd like access to these resources, drop it in the chat, and what we can do is send a link directly to the list serve after the webinar is over. So these resources here are all to give communities resources and toolkits made for Native culture. And so I'm just going to go through a little bit about them because I want to be conscious of our time here. But this Reclaiming Indigenous Food Relationship provides a framework designed to support integrating cultural traditions into healthy eating initiatives for the prevention of chronic diseases. Ordering nutritious Indigenous foods was developed to normalize healthy and Indigenous foods in Native communities across the nation, and it offers guidelines on selecting foods and beverages when, for example, you're planning meetings or gatherings and events where food is present. So for an example, at AICAF, if we are hosting an event, for example, our powwow for hope, we cater Indigenous foods. If we are going out as a team dinner, we will support Indigenous owned places. And we recognize that this might not always be realistic, depending on the financial budget that you have and resources. And so again, going into it also kind of provides guidelines on snack selection. So perhaps if you're having a meeting, instead of having chips available, having like fresh fruits or or nuts, whatever may be your first food, having that available as opposed to something else that's not. And this survivorship eating well together resource is a great one for folks that either have a survivor in the family. If you are a survivor, it talks about the importance of eating healthy foods. It offers tips on eating and healthy cooking methods and food safety. And it also talks about the role that families play in survivors' lives. On to the next slide, please, Eric. Alrighty. So this resource here is about healthy lifestyles and movement. And because on top of consuming first foods as a prevention, having an active lifestyle is super important for communities to remain strong and healthy. So this resource offers some guidelines on how you could implement healthy and Indigenous movement within your community. And so might that include having, stretch breaks. So something that we do when we're having a team meeting that maybe it's set for 2 hours is we'll get up and we'll move for 5 minutes. And one of our staff members who has a strength and kind of encouraging movement, however that looks for your ability, physical ability, just moving so that we remember to move throughout the day. We live in very sedentary lives, and it's important to remember to move. Other suggestions that this resource offers is keeping some physical items to help encourage movement, be that at school spaces, be that at after school spaces, again at meetings, just having really designated and intentional ways to encourage movement that is realistic. Next slide, please, Eric. And then another approach that, that we implement at AICAF is policy systems and environmental change. And this resource talks about how policy and the PSC approach can be used to reinforce the importance of using first foods as prevention. This Indigenous Lifeways, our prevention resources, is another really great one that we send out a lot. And again, it's available on that QR code. And I really liked seeing somebody's sharing breast milk as a first food example, because yes, absolutely, it is one of our our very, very first foods. For anybody who is able to breastfeed or consume breast milk, that is a first food. And so we have a resource on that as well. If anyone has any questions that they want to drop in the chat, they certainly can. I'm looking right now just to see if I missed anything. Thank you, Nancy. I'll be sure to send a link to these resources. All right, Eric, you can go on to the next slide. So the last thing that we wanted to share with you today, prior to you hearing from someone in working on first foods within their community, is we wanted to share a toolkit that we have available that is also available on our First Foods as Prevention campaign website. And again, if you would like the link, we will be sure to send that out along with our resource link. So whether this is something that you do for a job, or if this is just something that's important to you and that you'd like to be able to use social media to talk about the importance of first foods, this toolkit provides resources and templates for you to raise awareness about our campaign and to share the important work that other Native orgs are doing. And so this toolkit includes templates for a planning calendar, analytics tracker, press release template, and also a media consent form. Now, of course, by no means is it that you have to use everything for it to be effective. It's just these are ways that you can use social media to continue spreading the message of the importance of first foods, be that in your personal life or something that you incorporate into your job. That is also accessible to you. All right, so we've talked a lot, and thank you so much for listening to us so far and for sharing about your first foods and how they are used. We are now excited to be able to turn our conversation over to Claire Chase, who is the SNAP Ed coordinator at Leech Lake, to talk about what they do in their community and how they use first foods and encourage the use of first foods. So Claire, the floor is yours.
Audine, I don't know if you guys can hear me.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, perfect. So I think we're going to be giving a presentation on first foods and how we use traditional foods on Leech Lake and how we connect with them. So if you just advance to the next slide, please. So Audine, like I said, my name is Claire Chase. I'm part of the Leech Lake SNAP Ed program. In my picture, I am the very first one with my little peace sign. I am accompanied with my colleagues Sherry Seeley and Marcus Joy, who have been with the program just about as long as I have been. So what Leech Lake Snap Ed is we are currently focusing on bringing back culture into nutrition. A lot of the Snap Eds across Minnesota and just across the nation in general all have different kind of work plans and focuses, and ours is really about bringing culture back and utilizing that along with language. There's lots of different ways that we have done this, and we're going to share that with our programming. Our programming, some policies that we've done, some spaces we've helped create, and then some systems we've also designed specifically to include cultural foods as first food. And then we're also working on a social marketing campaign currently, which is Akaway and Anishinaabe Wanjigin, which means each traditional food, and this emphasizes eating Indigenous foods first. So if you would advance to the next slide, please. Thank you. So one of our biggest pieces that I always kind of like to start with is Snap Ed is not like, I would say Snap Ed is an enrichment piece to existing programming. That's how I view ourselves. And that might not be how everybody views Snap Ed, but that's how I view Snap Ed, that we're an enrichment piece. A lot of the things that we try to do are to create sustainability. So things that we can leave with the programs, leave with the organizations, and move past, and they can keep those there. So our partnerships are really, really important to us. They're fundamental to our work and our programming, and we work with a lot of folks. We work with our local school districts, so not only our tribal school in the area, but also our public school in the area. We've worked with the colleges in the past, not with just our tribal college, the Leech Lake Tribal College, but also we partner a lot with the university. And that has to do with like the extension programs, which also accompany Snap Ed, but also just because we've had really great connections with extension, so we were able to do collaborative work and share kind of same visions at different periods of time. We are actually one of the few Snap Ed programs that are housed under early childhood, which I think gives us a very different perspective and access to different areas of people. So we work with the early childhood prominently. That's one of our biggest and most prioritized partnerships. We work with the Boys and Girls Clubs as well. We work with youth outpatient programs. We also work with our elders in our elders buildings. And we've worked with convenience stores and grocery stores over the past year on healthy Indigenous foods. We work with our diabetes program, our food distribution program, and we've worked with our tribalship program in the past. These are all partnerships that we've utilized within the last couple of years, and ones that we're looking to reach out to again to restore that partnership. So if you would advance to the next slide, please. So we start with early childhood, right? I said this was one of the most prominent pieces that we work with. Again, it's just because that's where we're housed. And that's just like the most logical way for us to think about it, I suppose. When we're introducing first foods, we have to start with the little ones. We talk about this a lot as a group, me, Sherry, and Marcus, about how it is much more challenging to change the mindset of adults and elders who have already established their eating habits. Not saying that it's totally not doable, but it's so much easier to work with little kids and change their minds about things, right? We're growing them, we're helping educate them. And so what we've done with early childhood is we've created a lot of different exposures, and there's been lots of barriers and challenges along the way. It hasn't been that easy. But one of the first things that we've done is probably our farm to early care curriculum. This is a curriculum that was approached to us from, see if I can remember their name. Let's see. Oh my goodness, I'm gonna forget. It was from a different partnership we've done. And after we partner with Farm to Early Care because we were doing an initiative specifically for early care and not just the school district. And in talking to our teachers, so we talked to our teachers, we talked to our administrators, to make sure that this is something that is doable, to make sure that this is something that they want, to make sure that this is something, you know, that is going to be beneficial. We never take programming and say, this is what you're going to get, take it or leave it. We're always trying to see what they would like. And so what we found is that there were a lot of teachers in administration that didn't know about Indigenous foods, like didn't know about anything related to Indigenous foods, or had very, very limited knowledge. So we created this curriculum that was based off the Farm to Early Care curriculum, and it focused on Indigenous foods. We had a committee full of community members. We had a committee with our administrations, our teachers, our parents. There was a lot of like, a lot of building in the community, a lot of like building up and getting them excited again about talking about Indigenous foods and talking about seasonality. And so he created this year-long curriculum. And I will say the Farm to Early Care curriculum base is only a few months during the summer, just based on seasonal times for Minnesota. But this one goes all year round because, as you know, food for Anishinaabe is year round. Like there's no time that we're not harvesting food or thinking about ways that we're going to hunt or fish or net. Like there's food all year long. So we wrote a curriculum that highlighted that. So there's 2 foods per month. So the kids get to learn about that. And then the teachers get to have all these tools and resources and community people that they connect with and pull in, and they can talk about these foods. And it's really exciting. The kids get to experience it. As you can see, they're tasting them, they're looking at them with magnifying glasses, they're exploring where to forage these things in books. We have community members coming in to show how to parch rice. They get to feel it, they get to smell it, they get to do all of these things. And not only that, but early childhood programming are so based on bringing family in together too, that all these events, we can invite parents in, we can invite grandmas in, we can invite grandpas in, we can invite everybody in and create this safe space for adults who may not have been exposed to this. Because as we talked about earlier on in our committees, is that a lot of the time there's been like a breakage of knowledge transfer, right? It's been what's happened with tribal communities all over the place. And so just trying to restore these connections and make it safe for people to ask and say, hey, I don't know how to do this. Can you please help me? And so we're creating those spaces for families as well. And so that is instilled here. We've been doing the Farm to Early Care, I think, for 5 years. I would say it's been going pretty strong, but we've had a lot of turnover, as I'm sure a lot of early childhood programs have as well. So if you want to advance to the next slide. And so then our next steps, as you can see, they progress throughout the years. Like I said, we work with our school districts, we work with our Boys and Girls Clubs, we work with our families and communities and our elders. So we get to see these kids in early childhood settings, and then we get to progress, we get to see them in the elementary schools when we're working with kindergarten. In that picture, the very first picture on the bottom left, we have some kids from our Buganagejic school, and they're searching for open meat, which are potatoes. So we're doing a sensory activity. They're getting to pretend to dig up potatoes because we can't necessarily take them to all these potato patches, right? They haven't grown all those, so we have to improvise and utilize different ways to expose them to the food. And then not only do we get to see them in the elementary school settings, but then we get to also see them in our Boys and Girls Club settings, so that they get to experience foods in a different way. There's different curriculums for each age group as well. So we're building upon skills. Not all of them are traditionally based, but we make sure to modify our curriculums. That's what's really nice about our tribal program, is that we're able to modify curriculums to make sure that we're including traditional food. So we can change recipes or add different things to the recipes to make sure that we're touching on that. I know there's some places and some curriculums that are very strict, like very scripted, but we're very fortunate to be able to talk about these because they're very important, and our students found them to be very important, that these are things that we need to be integrating as long as we feel comfortable doing them. And then with the Boys and Girls Club, we have them in the high school. So some of these high schoolers in this picture right in the middle, the third one up to here. These are kids that I've seen from the Boys and Girls Club. These are kids that have have many different connections with them from all sorts of our areas, right? We get to see them during the summer. We get to see them at the school district, at the Boys and Girls Clubs. We see them sometimes even at the early childhood program, like moving forward. We're not quite there yet from early childhood to high school, but we're getting there. But yeah, so then they're here and they're experiencing different flavors. They're experiencing different medicines. We're talking about how these herbs and spices, these things that we can harvest and forage out in the woods and dry, they're beneficial to our bodies, or like exposing them to new foods. Sometimes they haven't tried any of these foods before. And this is the age group that we're actually piloting an evaluation for on how much Indigenous foods are they consuming and how often are they doing that. And what we saw, we've only done the survey like 3 full times. And one of our classes increased their number, like increased the amount of Indigenous foods they were having by 100%. And again, like we're just in the base stage of this, we're in the base piloting stage, so we have to reassess how we're doing this, how we're gauging this. But like it just shows that either they're 1, eating more, or 2, they're understanding what Indigenous foods are, right? Because that's one of the challenges as well. Sometimes people just don't know that they're eating Indigenous foods. And then of course we get to work with our families. So we've been doing a lot of virtual family cooking classes. And these are really great, right? Because they're multi-layers of ages, they're multi-layers of parents and kids. So we'll see parents that we've seen before. We've seen kids that have been at the Head Start that have grown up now cooking with their families, remembering Indigenous foods, remembering Indigenous words, like being able to have that conversation with their parents and knowing that that's good for them, right? So then not only does that remove a barrier from the parents of like, oh, my kid's not going to eat this, so I don't want to try and waste it. We're helping remove some of those barriers, and then also helping them learn how to cook with these foods as well. They've never done that before, because we haven't all cooked with Indigenous foods before either. And we talk about harvesting and drying and gardening all throughout the summer as well. I believe that's something I did forget to put in the slides, but we do a lot of gardening and foraging throughout, and then we post a lot of this on our social media pages so that people have access to this. Like we're never trying to keep this information to ourselves. And even the Farm to Early Care curriculum, that is a shared, Google Drive link that I can send to anybody who's interested in it. And anybody can view the curriculum, use the curriculum, change it and alter it as you see fit for your community. You would move to the next slide, please. All right, and so like I said, our creative process is we do the reach, we repeat. So because we get to see everybody, 0 to elders, we're able to have like these same conversations again, because the more that we see it, the more that we're exposed to it, the more repetitiveness that we have, the more it's going to stick with us, right? And then we always think about the medium as well. So like, where are we meeting our people at? Where are we meeting our community members at? Where are we meeting our organizations at? We do, like I said, we do virtual cooking classes. We do in-house cooking classes. We stay late after work to host CHF family events so that families know how to create healthy snacks with berries and seeds and things like that. We have done email listing just because that's been easier for some of our people out in the outer communities with gardening tips and foraging tips. It's just like knowing our community and wanting to make sure that we're meeting them in the spaces that they need to be, because they're going to be, as you know, people are just like at all different places in their life, and understanding that and truly like being part of your community and knowing the people that you're servicing and how to do that properly is going to make that most beneficial. And then writing policies. So having like policies, written MOUs, creating physical spaces. So like I will say, we've had lots of barriers, right? We've had conversations on behalf of some of our teaching staff and parent staff about lack of breastfeeding rooms and nursing rooms. And we were really fortunate a few years ago, they were redesigning this new child care center, and we were able to design the actual breastfeeding room. right? So they had like this great place that was calming. They had access to extra storage bags, to nursing pads, to trash cans, to just accessible outlets. Like, so you weren't reaching down under a table trying to plug in your pump. Like all these different things we're thinking about to accommodate breastfeeding so that we can support it, and give parents like the resources to come in and feed their kids, because that's important. Like, you should be able to come in, see your kid and feed your kid if you need to, and then go back on to work. And we're really fortunate to be able to do that. Some other spaces that we've developed are like outdoor learning spaces. So like I said, Farm to Early Care is all about these seasonalities of foods that are out there that you can harvest on fish. And a lot of with early childhood is there are lots of littles that can't leave the actual grounds of early childhood just for like safety purposes and license purposes. So we've had to create spaces that were accessible to teachers and to those kids, because not all the time. I saw somebody mention about urban areas lacking spaces, but there's a lot of people even up here in Minnesota that don't know where to go. They don't know where to harvest these things or how to do these things. So creating a space where that can be done. So there's a trail, the Megwayak Trail in Cass Lake, behind the early Head Start, that has berry bushes planted. There was wild sage that might have been sadly disrupted when they put a fence in. There's maple trees that are grown. There's garden beds that are there. So there's pieces that we can bring our little children out to, and even family members who need to come and have a safe space to do all these things. Like, there's space for that. So we're creating this and encouraging kids to be outdoors and be physical, and just create new generations of land stewardship, because that's what a lot of these teachings are based in, is just like respecting the earth and knowing the earth and treating it properly. So starting that at such a little age. And then of course, writing policies to make sure that these are in place, making sure that like meal menus are including traditional foods, making sure that there's fresh local foods, making sure that there's time to do physical activity, making sure that there is breastfeeding policies put in place. So like, we've worked with committees for the band with at large, and then also localized within different early child care and child care facilities. So like things like that to make it more prominent and make sure that they are, you know, sustainable there once they're gone. And if you would advance to the next slide, please. It might be my last one, actually. Yeah. So Miigwech, that's kind of us in a nutshell. That's kind of what we do. I'm sure I've forgotten things. But like, if anybody wanted to keep in touch with us, we have a Facebook page. That is our office number that I will say we're almost never there for. But you can email me. I answer my email almost all the time. And then you can also find us on our Leech Lake Early Childhood website page. Like, you can reach us in many, many different ways. I want to share like any resources that I can with people. Like I said, this is not knowledge for me to keep. This is not knowledge for my program to keep. So we want to share it, and that's how we get better, right? We get better at our job by sharing it and finding new ways of doing things, or different ways that we didn't know before. So like, always sharing them as well.
Thank you, Claire, for a wonderful presentation. Miigwech, I really liked how she talked about the land stewardship and respecting earth, respecting the people, and then incorporating policies to make sure that those will remain. The work that they have done is something that we wanted to share with all of you. It's very important to spotlight, to highlight the successes that they have done as a people, and working together to move that traditional knowledge forward, and starting from early childhood development. And we want to thank them for their presentation today. We want to thank all of you for joining us. And as we continue onward, I also would like to share at this time our door prizes that we have distributed so far. Earlier, we gave off names: Dawn Settenfield, Kelsey Larson, Yasmin Graff, and then Eric, could you read the other 3 names that you have in your position that have won the prizes?
Anthony Barella, Tammy Scott, and Dr. Linda. The last name is the one I didn't get.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Dr. Linda?
Yes.
Okay. All right, thank you. With those 6 prizes, we were very fortunate to get some donations. The first folks won the Sacred Breath t-shirts, and then we also have 2 Indigenous pink sweatshirts and 2 Creating Connection sweaters, and then 2 cups. So those are 8 items. And then 1 item that we have as a grand prize is a food box. But we wanted to share those winners right now. And then with that, does anyone have any questions for Claire at this time? You can share in the chat if you have a question for Claire. She has offered her resources. She's willing to share what she has with everyone here today. She's always been very helpful in that aspect. Claire, in her work with Leech, has done phenomenal in being a resource to the other tribes through her program. So if there's no questions, here's a reflect.
Sorry,
Okay.
real quick, Wendina. Anthony has their hand up. So Anthony, you should be able to talk now.
Thank you.
Oh, oops, that was a mistake.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
Oh, no problem, Anthony. And then Tammy is asking if we'll be sending links to all of these great resources. Tammy, some of them have QR codes that we provided, and it is available for access to the resources. And yes, we can send the links out. And with that, oh, okay, Dr. Linda is here. Thanks for the gift. She would like to donate her gift to the Leech Lake SNAP program. Is the Indigenous Pink Cookbook available? The cookbook is available. The first 75 people that registered will get a cookbook today, but the cookbook is available on our website. And now to go into the reflective questions, since there were no questions for Claire, something for you to think about. What food stories do you know, and what is being done to preserve and share those stories? That's a reflective question for you to think about as you leave the webinar today and you go back to your daily routine, wherever you have joined us from. What food stories do you know, and what is being done to preserve and share those? That is a question for all of you to consider. And then the other question, Eric, if you could put up the other one at this time. How is food prepared in the community? How are these practices shared among people and through time? In your own community, how is food prepared? And these practices shared among people and through time? Those are reflective questions for you to think about. If you would like to share with us, you certainly can in the chat. But as we are ending the webinar. We are at the tail end. We do have one grand prize left, which is a food basket. And we will draw for that through the wheel of names that Nora will assist us in at this time.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today and for participating, because that really makes this webinar just all the more beneficial to everybody. Yes, we have a first foods basket. I just want to share what's in that basket before I spin the wheel. So we have some mace in there, the colored popcorn. We have wild rice and plum syrup. And there's one more bag, I cannot see it in the photo. But this was curated to reinforce the importance of Indigenous foods. So I will spin, and I will say that you must be present to win. So I will just double check that list. So I'm spinning now, and I have Daniel DeVoe, apologize. Is Daniel still here? Don't think so. Oh, maybe they are. Looks like they are. Great. Well, thank you so much again, everybody, for sticking with us to the end. If you have any questions for us before we log off, you can certainly share them in the chat. If there's anything else that you would like to share with us, to share to the larger group, you can also put that in the chat. To answer your question, Shelly, we will send a follow-up message to you. So we'll just have to do a little bit of kind of back-end work, but we will have an answer for you certainly by the end of today.
And with that, thank you for joining us today. It's something to behold and thinking about how food has been a part of our way of life from the time you were born throughout your years into your senior years. And with a great partner, hearing from Claire today and all the work that they are doing, just think of the monumental impact that will have on their community and their neighboring communities, like a pebble you throw in the water and it moves onward. And food is prevention. It is healing. It is part of our history. It is a part of who we are. And it's an anchor to our teachings and to our reclaiming food into our lives, so that we can move forward in health and goodness and good thoughts. Thank you to all of you for joining us. Thank you to all who have donated for today's door prizes. We have used the chat feature to pick out questions, and your sharing of those have been very, very engaging for everybody. So thank you so much. We hope you enjoy the rest of your day. And the next food preparation that you have today, whether it's lunch or dinner, think about today's webinar and think about how Indigenous food has played a role in your life or someone that you may know, and how you can move forward with today's lessons as well. And thank you to Eric and Nora for always doing a phenomenal job in their role as well in helping the American Indian Cancer Foundation, and to everyone at AICAF, and to all of our partners, and to all of you. Thank you. Ahiahe.
Have a very great rest of the day.